No.
Hi guys, I'm Asia Perello here as a Shannon Fabrics ambassador, and we're going to be talking about foundation paper piecing today. I'm going to wait and see if a few people join us. I know we have Jackie Hillman, one of the ambassadors. She's over in the on the YouTube channel right now, and she's posted already a link to this month's National Sewing Month giveaway that Shannon is doing. So head over to YouTube and you can click the link right from there for that sweepstakes. There's really great prizes. The overall winner will actually win a Burnett 44 Fun Lock machine. That's by Bernina, and it's awesome. So it's a really cool prize. Lots and lots of stuff in there. Hey, Mary, I see you. See you over there. She's another ambassador. Mary actually has been working with me on foundation paper piecing and how we're going to do it with Quilting Cuddle. She was my fearless tester, so she's been in the trenches with me. So it's fun to have her here too. I'm here in Maryland today. The weather's finally cooling off a little bit. We're having some really, really nice fall days. Hopefully it's not too cold, but starting to cool off for some of you too. It's been a pretty hot summer here. So a lot of people will think foundation paper piecing, that might be a little tricky with Cuddle because of the nap. And we have a fun trick to keep the naps going in the same direction, which will be a great tip that we do today. But it's actually been a great way to use up some of those little scraps of Cuddle. So we'll go through all of the steps of how we're going to do it. Quilting Cuddle has made it really, really easy. This is possible to do with something like a C3, but I would just rather use Quilting Cuddle because it's made it super, super easy. Jackie says the trees are already turning in Wisconsin, and they're actually starting to turn here in Maryland already. And it's very early for that, but I'm here for it. It's been too hot. Tishua says that she thinks foundation paper piecing, which is also FPP. So if you see people put FPP, that is abbreviation for foundation paper piecing. She says it would be interesting with Cuddle, and it really is. It's fun, and it's a little trickier because you have to think of it almost as a directional fabric when you're thinking of the knit. So the nap, sorry. So when you're thinking of the nap, you kind of think of it as almost a print that has a direction. So this technique would work for if you had a directional print as well. But I kind of like a challenge, and it's not really complicated. So it's been fun. And like I said, a great way to use up some of the scraps. Oh, apparently it felt like fall today, even down in Florida, which is saying a lot because I know it's been hot down there too. So this is a pillow that I did recently using this foundation paper piecing block that it's going to be a Shannon pattern. So it'll be out on the website soon. We're actually going to be having classes for this as well. So you could take a class with one of the ambassadors at your local quilt shop. So you can ask your quilt shops to get that scheduled with Shannon. That'll be coming up really soon because the pattern's almost complete. But the really cool thing is all of these naps are all facing in the same direction, including the Lux that we used for the pillow on the back. And so it just makes it extra snuggly, but you get those really nice points, and everything is sharper than you might get if you were doing it just with regular piecing. So it's pretty fun. The block is a 12.5-inch block. So it's going to end up a 12-inch block, but with the seam allowance, it comes out to 12.5 inches. But the pattern also includes a smaller 6-inch block. So what's cool about the 6-inch block is that you can do something like this. So that was the Meet Me in the Garden Quilting Cuddle, which I think a lot of us have seen a lot of that because it was the first collection, and it's been awesome. It's on the shelves now in shops. So go out there, go to your local cuddle shop, and you can actually touch the Quilting Cuddle. Meet Me in the Gardens here. I think some shops have started to get Wanderlust, which is the next collection. So this is another thing you can do with that. This is using the 6-inch pieces, and instead of placing them facing outwards, I place them facing in. So it would look kind of a little bit like a little bit trippy. I kind of liked it with the Wanderlust wavy fabric there. I thought that'd be kind of fun. We've also done one where, let me show you. Let's pretend these are 6 inches. We also did one where they pointed out. So let's see, where am I? So that would be, let's put this on its side. Sorry guys, I'm trying to figure out how to show you. Oh yeah, so like that, where they would all point around and then you'd have, 2 more over here facing the opposite way. So that makes a really cool, almost a star shape. I feel like this looks a little bit like a succulent. So in my mind, it's kind of a succulent pattern, but I like that you can do lots of different things with it. And this is the perfect size for using the Shannon pillow forms. So the Dreams pillow forms, and that's what's in this pillow here. They're really nice and fluffy. It's an 18-inch pillow. And once you get the borders of luxe, the back piece is just an 18-inch piece of luxe, and it fits perfectly. Little zipper on the bottom, so you can swap it out. And of course, Quilting Cuddle is just like the rest of our cuddles, where it's totally washable, cold water, no fabric softeners at all, no dryer sheets or anything like that. You just do everything in a low temp or no heat in the dryer. But it's really nice to be able to just clean everything up anytime you want to. But the pillow is awesome. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to use the 6-inch pattern, and we'll just kind of talk about some of the basics. Now, a lot of foundation paper piecing patterns, they normally don't have all of the basics in there because they kind of assume you know how to foundation paper piece. It's one of those things that can be tricky to put into words in a pattern. So a lot of people just do a video and then say, refer to my video on my website if you're a beginner. So in the Shannon Fabrics pattern, we are not putting all of every single step of how to foundation paper piece. We're just putting all of the things that you're going to need to know to convert it to cuddle. So any foundation paper piecing pattern that you have can be used with the Quilting Cuddle. So even it doesn't have to be the specific patterns that we're making for the Shannon website. Don't forget to share the link today. We're giving away fat quarter packs of Quilting Cuddle. So I think we'll have 3 winners. We'll have one who's already shared previously. They shared the preview, and then someone from 2 more from this who are watching today and who share. So don't forget to share and have your friends join in so they can see how we're foundation paper piecing. So anyway, back to foundation paper piecing. I'm going to change the view to the overhead so you can see kind of what a pattern will look like when it comes in. I can see some comments coming in. So if you have questions as we're going along, I will try to answer some of them, and Adriana might pop some on the screen too. So feel free to ask questions. If I don't see them and don't get to answer them right here while we're live, I'll come back and answer them in the feed later. So definitely your questions will get answered. Let me see here. Switch us over to the above view. Okay, so this is what a foundation paper piecing pattern might look like. So this piece here was, let me get this piece out. And this is a little bit different. This was an earlier piece. Let's get this one, actually get the pillow out because that is not exact. All right, so here's the pillow. It's really big. And this is the 6.5-inch piece, so you can tell it's much smaller, but that's why I did it, so you could actually see it on the camera. But this A section here, so this whole section is going to be done. Then this B section will be done. The C section will be done. D section will be done. And then we'll put them together. So each of these has a 1/4-inch seam allowance. So just your standard quilting 1/4-inch seam allowance on these boxes. So you'll prepare the boxes using foundation paper piecing and then put them together with regular piecing with a 1/4-inch seam allowance. Now, in the pattern itself, it'll tell you where this A section goes, but I'm just kind of showing you today. This A section is this first part of the flower. So this little corner up here. B are these pieces right down here. So this section here is A and B. And then C are these big 3 points up here. And then D is this little strip here. So it gets broken up like that so that so that your paper even in the bigger size, it can fit nicely. So you're not having to tape a bunch of pages together if you print it out, or if it comes with your class, if it's already printed out pattern for the class, you're not having to do any taping. So you can have the section A can fit here, section B can fit on another piece of paper, and you can just cut things out that way. The other reason we do it is because the nice thing about foundation paper piecing is it gives you some of those angles that you might have a lot of trouble doing if you're just piecing. And so if you're going through the trouble of having all these really cool angles, you don't want anything, two angles hitting each other in a way that's going to leave you a big lump and, you know, ruin the aesthetic that you're getting from having these all play out in the right way. So that's just how these patterns are done. And so we would start with this A1. You're going to take paper, scissors. You don't want to be using your really good Karen K Buckleys with these. And this pattern here, I'm going to cut out the different sections. And you don't have to cut it out perfectly. Now, I said earlier that Mary is watching. She's one of our ambassadors, and she was helping me with the testing of this pattern. And this was, she was helping me with an earlier version, and I've added the section where I've added it so that we're doing it in sections now. So she might be like, what are you doing? This isn't the way we did it, but it's going to make a lot more sense. And I think even she'll agree that it's going to just go together a lot nicer. So this is how they'll be arranged in the end, A, B, C, D, and then these will be put together. And it just gives you a much smaller area to work with at a time. And Helen Powers is asking if we added seam allowance. Yes, the pattern already has that seam allowance in there. So the bold line is the outside edge, and that is a 1/4 inch seam allowance to these inside edges here. So each of these has seam allowances in them. The lines inside here don't have seam allowance included, but I'll show how we compensate for that as we get going. Now, the other thing to think about with foundation paper piecing is, especially if you're a beginner, is you're really going to be working on the back of the piece of paper. So I'm going to just cut out section A here. I cut these out, but then I realized it has stuff on the back because I reused my paper. So I'm not, in order not to confuse you, I'm going to use this one, which is blank on the back. So it's a normal piece of paper. Let me say one more thing before we get started. So the whole point here is we're trying to keep our naps going in the same direction. So in order to do that, we have to decide what way we want the nap to face. So let me go back to the other camera really quick for a second, and I'll show you this. Oh, one second. I'll do it on this. So in this pattern here, all the naps are going in this direction. So on our piece of paper, all the naps are going to be going in this direction. So we want to mark in something permanent. So this is a thin little Sharpie, right on the pattern piece, an arrow going in the direction that we want it to go. And I'm going to do this on each of these so we don't forget. This may seem silly right now because we're doing it the same way that the writing is, so it looks obvious. However, if you're going to do one of these type of things where you're using this block all around in different directions, you can kind of see here, I've left the paper in so you can kind of see how crazy the back gets. Here I put an arrow down. Here I put an arrow down, arrow down, arrow down. The nap is all going to be going this direction, but you can see these have been twisted around us, like each one has had a 1/4, like a 90-degree turn. So you kind of figure this out before you get started. So you know, as you're placing fabrics, how your lines, how you want the nap to be facing. So we're going to do that. I am just going to have this one be the standard direction, but I still want to mark it in because I don't want to forget which way as we're going along. It'll also help us in a few other ways. Okay. So to start with, again, we're going to be working on the back of the piece of paper. And I have all my pieces cut out. This pattern does tell you what size to cut out all the pieces and of what. I'm going to be using Wanderlust Quilting Cuddle here today. So I have all my little pieces cut out. And so I've already pre-marked them. As I cut them out, I mark which direction the nap is going, and I mark what number this is. It's kind of hard to see on this, but it's an A1. And I'm using um, the water erasable marker so that it'll go away later. I mean, you can't really see through the Quilting Cuddle, but I always get nervous because it's a little bit thinner pile than some of our other cuddles. So I try to use something that will go away later. So I mark which piece it is. This is A1. And so I know this is the piece, and I can feel for the nap, so I can feel which direction it is, but it just is so helpful as you're cutting it out if you mark each piece with an arrow, so you don't really have to think about it later. The other way you can tell is if you hold it up, it's going to have a little bit of stretch on just with the fabric size and not at all on the selvage side. So you can always tell which is with the fabric, and then you could tell from here to here which way, like it's maybe hard for you to see, but that one clearly that's the wrong way. This is the right way. When it gets to some of them, like this is a solid, this is a beautiful bellflower color solid. It can be hard to tell just by feeling because it feels so soft in this wrong direction. I mean, it's really soft. But you can tell because look at how dark that got compared to how light it gets. So it doesn't feel any different. It just looks different. So even though it's a lower pile and you might not think that you need to worry about the nap direction in these, it's going to be almost like if you're working with velour or something that's directional, it's going to look shadowy if you have one piece that way and the other piece the other way. It just is going to look like they're almost different colors and different pieces if you don't have the naps going the same direction. So think of it as a directional print versus just the nap, because the nap is just so soft in both directions in this particular fabric. Okay, so this A1 piece, I am going to use, I'm using the OD 505 glue stick. The reason I'm using this is because it is temporary. I can lift it up and reposition it, which you'll see later. We do a bunch in this process. So that's makes it really, really good. And I'm not using the spray because if I was using the spray, the big can of it, for these tiny little pieces, we'd have overspray everywhere. It could be just a disaster. So this new little 505 OD temporary glue stick is great. You could use other glue sticks. I just know this one lifts up really well. So it depends. I mean, most of them wash out. I'm not worried about the washing out. It's the lifting up in this process. So I've found that works the best for me. So what I do here is we have these lines on the pattern. And these lines are telling us this square is needing to go in there, and it's needing to cover this whole seam allowance area of A1, this whole square. But you have to also imagine there's at least 1/4 of an inch seam allowance here around the square on those two lines. So your piece needs to fit something like this. The pieces in the pattern are cut a little bit bigger, so you don't have to be overly concerned or worried. This is a great way to use up some scraps, but you don't want to. The worst thing is if you made it a little bit too small and then you have issues later. So it's better to have a little bigger because we are going to be trimming as we go. So what I do is, in order to know where I need to line it up on the back, I like to do some creasing and folding. And a lot of people will do this with foundation paper piecing. And we're going to do it today in a few different ways, but you'll see how this method goes. But I am really just creasing around that box for right now so that we can see where we need to put this first piece. So remember, we put the arrow here that the nap is going in that direction. I also need to put on the other side of the page, because this is the side we're going to be working on the most, an arrow going down. So you don't forget, even when we're on the back side, this is the direction we want the nap to go. Because remember, the pieces are going to be on the back side facing up, even though we're stitching from the front. So if you can see, there's this creased box right here, which is where that piece needs to go. I creased it on the inside lines, not the seam allowance, because I can kind of just see the seam allowance where it is. Now, the piece has my arrow. It's facing this way, so I know it needs to flip up. And now everything is going to be facing this way, and I'm going to glue that one in place. You don't need a ton of ton of the ODF, but you do want to get it sticking nicely in place. The other thing it does is any bigger pieces that you have, if you are using scraps and you don't trim them down right away, it holds them in place so you're not worrying about floppy fabrics as you go along. Because as this gets a little bigger, especially on the bigger size, you can have some fabrics that are over here that you're not working with at the time, and you don't want them to flop over. But this is going to keep it all nicely solid there. I do have my iron. It's not on the setting that I want it, so I'm not going to press right now because I forgot I was pressing my daughter's pinafore this morning for school, so it was on cotton. So I'm going to wait a second, let it cool down. I actually did press it on cotton the other day on the Quilting Cuddle, and it was fine, but I don't want to do that all the time. But we are going to press. That would just help lock that ODF in place, but we don't need to for this next step. So now our next piece that we're going to be doing is A2. So these are going to go in order, A1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as we go down here. So A2, I know is this piece here because I marked it already. And it is going to go, it's going to be attached to A1 and flip down. So it needs to be able to cover this little triangle there. So remember, the nap is going to end up, the arrow is facing that way. And this piece has the nap going like this. So it's going to end up down there, which means I want to make sure it's flipped up. And what I do first is I'm going to pin this in place. I'm going to pin it. I'm going to take that A2 and crease it really well where that line is. We're going to be stitching on this line to attach the two. So I'm just creasing on that line. And this is where I'm going to take a friction pen. So friction pen, we're not writing it on the fabric, we're writing it on the paper. So we're just going to put a line here that shows that's where we want the line. It needs to hit that seam allowance. So I want to line these up like this. Sorry, I keep flipping around and this is going to end up now with more than 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, but I can trim it later. And I just want to make sure I have at least 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And you can see here, those pins are right along that stitching line. So we know we got it in the right place. I just temporarily flip that down just to double check that the naps are going to be in the right direction. And then I kind of hold it up to the light. You can also use a light box. And you just want to make sure that that's going to cover that entire A2 section. And this clearly does. So we know we're going in the right direction. So now I do a little bit of overkill with pins. But if you've ever worked with Cuddle before, you know we go a little crazy with pinning. I want to make sure everything's pretty locked in place. I don't want to have to come back and do it a second time to fix things. Although I will say I have done some adjusting, and this stuff, the seam ripper works really well with Quilting Cuddle, guys. I know none of us love using a seam ripper, but the stitches don't get lost as much as they do in some of the other cuddles. So it really is nice to be able to take out stitches if you do want to. If you like things a little perfect. So look at this. I mean, that's ridiculous. That it looks like a nightmare with all those pins. But what I'm doing is I'm just locking this whole piece in place. We are only stitching right here, but I do not want this fabric to flip down, get caught in the seam allowance. It can just be really, really tricky. So I take the time now and I just try to get the edges done. Those 2 pins I put down below temporarily, I'm going to take out just so that they're not underneath there, because I want to take the pins out as I go. And I am going to just put a pin right at that stitching line so that I know that fabric there is pretty secure too. These I'm going to take out as I stitch. So there you go. You can't even really, sorry, I have it upside down, but you can't even really see that stitching line right now because I have so many pins, but I promise you it's there, and that fabric is all ready and set to go. So I'm going to move over to the sewing machine so you guys can see what we're going to do over there. Okay, so I am using a 3.5 millimeter stitch. I could actually, you know what? I am going to go down. I'm going to go down to a 3. I want it to be a little bit tighter than we normally would do with regular Cuddle, and the Quilting Cuddle is happy to accept that. Like, it's been no problem having that through there. I do have a by any stiletto, so if I have any issues, that can help me guide everything through. I want to make sure I constantly am lifting up and making sure all the fabric is lying flat. I don't want anything to be run over in a spot where it's not supposed to be run over. So these pins on the side here are not going to get hit by the needle, but that first one I already took out because it was right in the way. So I am going to backstitch. My machine doesn't do a great starting backstitch or locking stitch. So I don't love the locking stitch on this machine, but if you have a locking stitch, you could do that too. And I'm just going to continue to stitch, and we're stitching right on that line and then about 1/4 inch off. And you just keep going in the same exact line pattern. And then I do a few back stitches. Again, you could use a locking stitch if you have one. Mine, I don't super love, so I'm stuck with having to do it that way. Okay, so now I'm going to trim my threads because, again, I don't love the trimming on my machine either. So you guys, I'm sure you guys have woes with your machines too, but that's mine. All right, so now we've stitched it and we've got all those pins in there. So I'm going to take these pins out, and then we'll take a look and see what things are looking like. You are stitching right on that paper, which could dull your needle because it's paper, but you really should be changing your needles out pretty often anyway. So this is a good excuse to change your needle for your next project. So here we've got the naps facing the right direction. We know it covered that A2 spot, so we're all cleared to go on to the next step. But before we do, this is kind of an ugly seam allowance here. So I like to trim my seam allowances right away as I go, so everything's nice and neat and cleaned. Now remember, we stuck that ODF under this piece here. And so I like to lift that up. I fold back where we already folded and stitched on that piece. And then with the paper folded out of the way, and this is that line where we stitched here, I will use a ruler. And if you're doing a bigger piece, you can have your bigger ruler. I'm just using this little one here from OmniGrid. And I'm going to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance there. And I just chop that off. So now you've got a nice looking seam allowance here. I toss that. And then I typically will just do a quick little vacuum right there. And just everything is all set. You have no cuddle dust to worry about. Now, you'll probably see that that seam allowance there for the first fabric I put down is not great. It's only about 1/8 inch. It's because I just was going quickly, and you can see how much seam allowance is passed on this top part. But I have found that with Quilting Cuddle, even that like tiny little seam allowance is not going to have any issue because, as we know with Cuddle, it's a knit, so it's not going to fray. It doesn't have a fraying edge that'll unravel. So we have that going for us. And I've had no problems with if it's a little bit too small of a seam allowance, but we are aiming for at least 1/4 inch or more, and then we chop it off to 1/4. So now what we're going to do is we are going to use the ODF again to put this right down in that same spot. Now remember, we only need to cover that tiny little triangle, but I'm putting it out at the edges because, as you'll see, once you get it down and into place, and I'm going to press it really quick. And I am pressing right on the top of it. If you're worried, you could also press on the back. Part of what I'm doing when I'm pressing here is I'm getting rid of the mark that I made with the friction pen. So I'm trying to get rid of that mark because that was only a temporary mark for that step. And I don't want to confuse myself later because I'm going to be doing some marking. So now this piece is locked in place and I don't have to worry about it flopping when I lift it up and I look. So now this A2 piece is tiny compared to this piece here, but it's there and we don't have to think about it right now again. So that the 505 really helps with that too. Like it just keeps everything together. So now we're going to the next number, which is A3. And again, I flip back on the line. And some people will do the perforating, like do all of these ahead of time. I like to do it as I go because it also creases the fabric. So you can see a little crease in the fabric here, and I like having that. So I know I need to aim for there and there as my stitching lines. And you can also see the little crease it made on there. So I go back over here, and now I kind of just do where the top and the bottom of the piece are. So I can see there and there are where I need to get it between, and then that's the line there. So if possible, I try to stitch from an edge toward the middle. So as you saw with this one, I did it from the edge toward the middle. So I now will be starting from the edge toward the middle on this one. So I'm going to try to line things up so that they're going this direction. This is my A3 piece, and our arrow is pointing down. So my arrow on this one's pointing down. We want it to face that way. Because we're just going to be flipping it over this way, again, just like this first piece, we don't have to worry about angles. We're not worrying about the nap that much. It's not complicated. It starts to get complicated in the next step, I think, when we do A4. Yeah, when we start doing those angles, that's where it gets a little tricky. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So this piece now needs to line up with at least 1/4 inch seam allowance. And we have a lot of nice space here to work with. Compared to that last one was a little tight. And so I'll put my pins in. I take some extra steps. They may seem like a waste of time, but I like to do them because then I know we're in the right spot. So that's about the stitching line where I put the pin. So now I just pretend, put it over, run my fingers down, make sure the naps are all going in the right direction, hold it up, make sure it's going to cover the piece that I need it to cover, and it does. So now I put it back. And now I'm going to lock it in place from the top with a whole bunch of pins. So here, I'm going to put pins just like I did before to make sure I have the fabric where we want it to be. Again, with Cuddle, we're always pinning so that we can control the fabric. We don't want the fabric to be controlling us. If you guys haven't shared yet, don't forget to share this feed, because we are giving away some fat quarter packs of the new Quilting Cuddle, which is exciting. So you can see here that if I pinned just these spots, all of this where I'm stitching is secure. So I don't have to worry about this spot. But I do not like this flapping. It's constantly getting caught under, and then you have to seam rip. So I just take, 5 seconds here, and I put 2 pins on the outer edge, and now that's out of the way. I don't have to worry about that section either. And it doesn't have to be pretty because I'm not stitching there. So then I just removed those 2 from the bottom that I put in to test. You could also do your test run from the top. That's an option as well, but I eyeball it a little better from the bottom. Okay, so now I'm going to stitch this one right along that line between A1 and A3 there. So I'll switch it back over to the sewing machine one. And as you're putting it under the machine, you do want to just be careful that nothing is flipping up. I'll take the pins out as I go, those ones that might be hit by the needle. We are using the 9014 stretch needle like we always do with Cuddle. I've found that works great with the Quilting Cuddle as well. Again, we're using a 3mm stitch, which is a little bit smaller than we would normally use with Cuddle, but Quilting Cuddle has been great with that for me. Your machine may differ, so just try and see what will work best on your machine. And remember, I went about 1/4 inch past using that same straight line to make sure that I got the whole seam allowance involved in there. All right, we'll take this back over here. You guys come back and forth with me. Okay, and Jackie's saying we use the long flower head pins. I love the ones that come in the box. They're a little bit sturdier, and they work great with all Cuddle, but I've been really liking them with the Quilting Cuddle too. Okay, so now that piece can just be flipped over nicely, naps in the right direction, and it does cover the whole space that it needs to cover. So before we glue, we are going to flip up this seam. So now here is where you see it a little bit better. I am ungluing and lifting up the stitches just on these previous parts to get to, you can see the perforations there, what we just stitched. Does that make sense? So I'm only dealing with the seam allowance here. The paper has been folded. The fabric that's here is only the seam allowance. And that OD 505 really allows it to be easy. Even when this was glued down, I was able to pull it back up really easy without pulling anything or stretching the fabric too much. So again, I'm just measuring from this where we just stitched 1/4 inch, and now I'm just going to lop that right off. And we just use a rotary cutter, no problem. Again, my small little Sovac, I just get that little bit of nap up. You do not have a ton of nap that comes off with the Quilting Cuddle, but I like to just get rid of it when I can. So I don't mess around. I like to keep it clean. And so there we go. So I put a little bit of that on there. Again, I'm putting it on these edges. Even though that's going to get covered up later, I like it so that it secures everything in place. Kind of give it a tap, and then I am going to just press again. Again, I'm getting the friction marks from the friction pen off as well in this process. So it's just giving that 505 a chance to dry, giving us a nice press at the seam allowances, and it's getting rid of the markings that we made on the paper. Okay, so here's where it gets a little bit trickier, but it's still not bad. And actually now you may see why we're using a permanent marker for the arrows that we put on there. And that's because if we used a friction pen, it'd be gone by now. So you do want to make sure you're using a permanent marker for the arrows. And I am going to put a marking over here too, just because I like to make sure I've got a few markings of where I want the nap to go. So now we're going to work with this line out to A4, and that's an angle, and it's not necessarily a right angle or 45-degree angle. It does not matter what angle it is with foundation paper piecing, and that's really cool, is that you don't have to have a marking on your ruler that has, a certain 45 or a 60 and you line it up or anything like that. All you're going to do is you're just going to fold back on that line. So what I like to do is I kind of find each of the end points, and it's especially apparent when you're using the bigger pieces, and then I slide my fingers out, and so I'm making a crease. Okay, so now I can see that crease there, and again, just so that I really know where it is, I'm making a line there. So I know that that's where I want to stitch. Now this is my A4 piece. When I cut it out, I already made sure I knew which direction the nap was going to go, and the arrow is on there pointing down. Now I know that piece needs to go here like this, right? It needs to fit there. It's going to fit on the back. We're going to be stitching on the back, but when it lands, it's going to be like this. So what I do is I use the crease on either side there. I have this facing exactly in the direction of the nap. So that arrow's facing down. And the cool thing about Quilting Cuddle, and it probably is hard to see here, but it's sort of like a grid on it. There are lines like when you think of regular knit fabric. So you can see when you have it facing straight or not. So you've got it right up and down. So even if you had a piece that was a scrap that wasn't perfectly cut, and this is kind of wonky too, but I can see which is straight up and down. All I'm going to do is use the creases that I made on either side there, and I can use my water soluble pen to make a mark right on this piece. So I know that this A4, this whole section here would fit really nicely in with that A4. So all I used was, we folded it. I made those creases there. I'm using that to actually mark the back of this. And if you were using a dark fabric like this, you can use, I have these little Madame So chalk pens that work really well for that. You could use a Sharpie, but I do worry it would show through later. So now you've got your marking. You still have to think about it, because when you get back over here, this is your arrow and the way the nap's going to go. And you know that this is the section you want to be using. So you have your mark here, you have the crease, this line needs to go lined up like that. And then this section is what you want to be folded down later once you've sewn. So that nap will all be in the exact right direction. So if you had it like this, you would realize, hey, when I was on the front, I made sure everything was below was going to be the part that came down. So you'd know to flip it around the other way. And this is also why I take that time to pin first on the actual stitching line so that I make sure I do really have my brain on straight and that it is exactly what I'm thinking. So that's a little bit off from there. Oops, I went even further off. Let's see my crease. It's right there. So you want to make sure you've got it right in the right spot where the crease should be. And this is the other tricky thing. When you are at this step, you are now stitching cuddle that wants to go in opposite directions. So previously, let me take this off for a second. When we were stitching these two together, the naps were already going the same directions and we were flipping it this way. So they sat together really nicely. Once I'm starting to twist things and we're putting cuddle that is, the nap is already facing a different direction when we're sewing it down, it wants to slide around a little bit more. So these diagonal ones, you just have to pin down a little bit better and make sure you've really got them in place. And you really want to see where you are stitching to. That crease is not showing up super well for me right here. There we go. So if I can get that pinned, pin this end first so I can make sure I've got it in the right place. Yep, there we go. I've got it now. And then the fabric's wanting to slide. It's wanting to slide down with those naps. So you just got to you don't want to pull it because it will stretch a little bit and you don't want to be stretching it. So you're not looking to stretch it at this point, but you do want to just make sure everything is nice and flat. So those are in the right spots. I can flip this down, and again, you just kind of double check that you'll have enough coverage there and double check that the naps are going the same direction, and it is. Okay, so now we're just going to do the same as we did for the other pieces where we are locking that piece in place. Now that we know we have it in the right spot, before we stitch it, we are just going to do all those pins to really make sure everything is nicely in place. And then we'll stay there. And again, these pieces on the edges here, I'm going to put something there too, a little pin there, so they don't flop over and get in our way as we're stitching later. Okay. So there's lots of different methods for foundation paper piecing. There's lots of tricks people have done over the years. We're worried about nap here, but people have been using directional fabric for years. So I'm sure there's other people that have other tips and stuff. So whatever tip you would use for directional fabric would work with the nap as well. So just if you already have your favorite way, feel free to use that. Let's go over to the machine. Just going to make sure everything's nicely locked in. Let's see here. Take out that first pin. And we are starting in the same direction as the line. So we are going straight toward the line. We're not starting off like here and then turning. So you want to just make sure the whole point is you're doing a very straight line the whole way. And we'll finish off that direction as well. So we just keep doing the same straight line across. Just do a couple back stitches. I went a little bit further off than I really would. And I think there's even like foundation paper piecing tools you can get and stuff. Oh yeah, Tishua Broadley. Yeah, she said that there is an FPP ruler that actually will help you with this process too. So yes, if you can get your hands on something like that, that would make this a breeze as well. Just trying to give tip for anybody that's a beginner and doesn't want to go out and buy a whole bunch of stuff. it's still possible to get all your naps just nicely going in the same direction. That looks good. So if it looks good, then we're going to, remember, we're going to lift these pieces up. They've been stuck down. We're just lifting them up only to that stitching line right there. Fold the paper back. And now only what we need to lop off is going to be there. So we just line up along the stitching line at that 1/4 inch and chop it off. And then we'll just do a quick little vacuum again. Okay. There we go. So then that would just get glued down for the next step. And we just press that down in place. Again, I just pulled it a little bit there, but you don't want to be pulling it. You just want to press it down, because that will give a little bit. We do have there is some stretch with the Quilting Cuddle. Not as much as you would have with the C3 Cuddle, but there is a little. So you just want to be careful you're not pulling anything or skewing it. So this next one is A5, and that is another diagonal. So we're going to do that one too, just so you can see it again. So this A5, the angle goes up here. I really crease it. Now I will put the marks on either side. Again, that's going to be the stitching line there. And now here's my A5 piece. This is a true scrap. You can kind of see it was like just this funky little piece I have here, but it'll work just fine. So I want this to go, the nap is down, and that's the arrows down. I want this to go, so it's going to fit nicely up in this A5 section. So I line it up so it's facing perfectly straight. And then I'm lining up my arrow, and you may not be able to see those creases very well from your end. I'm not sure how well it's showing up on screen, but I can see them really well here, and I'm just lining my ruler up on that crease. And all that's going to do is give me a stitching line for the next step. Sorry, the lights in here are kind of reflecting off the white, and so it's hard to see there. Okay, so that's our little stitching line for this piece. Again, we flip it back over because we are going to stitch on this side. And I do want to start my stitching here and come down. So I'm going to put it like this because this is the big section that I want to flip over. And then the nap will be facing straight down. So I'm going to angle it like that. Sorry. And again, these naps are now facing in different directions as we stitch it. So it's going to want to squiggle all over the place. It's trying to move around on you. But you just kind of hold in place. That's also why we, in the pattern itself, we do have so the pieces a little bit bigger than they need to be, just so that you don't have to stress too much about if things wiggle a little bit. As long as they're going in the right direction, you're good to go. You've got enough to compensate, but still being small enough to use scraps. So I'm just kind of holding the back in place and making sure nothing is pulled in any weird direction. You may notice that I'm putting the pins all in the same direction so that I can remove them from the before they get to the machine if anything feels like it might get in the way of the stitches later. So I try to just put them all in the same direction. And again, just on the outside edges there, just to make sure nothing is going to try to fold in while we're stitching. Okay. There we go. Oops, you know what? I forgot to take those out from underneath this time. So they are underneath there. That's one thing you should remember to do, is take the pins out from underneath. Normally I flip them to the top, but I forgot this time. So at least I noticed it before the needle got to it. So that's one thing to take note of. Okay. and my little stitches. Okay. So many pins, but then I'm not having to worry that stuff got caught in it, because stuff did get caught in it during the process a few other times. And it was just a pain to have to unpick things. Like I said, Quilting Cuddle does unpick actually pretty nicely. So it wasn't that big of a deal, but nobody wants that. You don't want to have to be unpicking. You want to be sewing. So again, we're just going to lift up the section that was just being temporarily held in place. And if stuff starts to unravel here, like anything that's been stitched already starts to break apart, that's okay, because we are going to take the paper off later. So all you're doing is just giving it more perforation to come out easily later. And this is not a section that's going to need to be stitched over later. So it's okay if it starts to come up a little bit there, but we just fold back on that perforation that we already, the line that we just stitched on. And then all that is going to be lopped off as seam allowance. And yeah, this Wanderlust is gorgeous, isn't it? It's my favorite of the collections for Quilting Cuddle right now. It's absolutely beautiful. That's part of why I wanted to do this pattern, is because I wanted a way to use up all the smaller scraps. So the 12-inch block is really fun and I love it in a pillow, but I just really like using the smaller 6.5-inch or 6-inch block so that I can use up all these smaller scraps, because it's so pretty. I don't want to get rid of it. All right. I'll just press that really quick. Okay. And there we go. So as you see, naps are all going the same direction. As you go on, like this next one would be A6, and that's just a flopping down. So that's another easy one where you don't have to worry about drawing the line or anything. You just literally put it that way and flip it down. And then there'll be a diagonal, then there's a flip down, then there's a diagonal. So there are a few diagonals in this pattern, but it's not overly complicated. Using that little method will help out a ton. I'm going to go run and I have a little book I want to show you guys of what I'm planning to do for some paper, foundation paper piecing. But honestly, any foundation paper piecing that you have will work. So it will be good to go. Hold on. Just make sure my camera just might have gone off. So let's see how that goes. Oh, there we go. Okay. The book. So we've seen this. This is like the Wanderlust that I was working with today, which is just, oh, so pretty. I can't get over it. This is another one I did in the Wanderlust. And I did notice that because I used all prints, I didn't love how busy it was looking. So I wanted to add in some of the solids so that the prints could really shine. And oh my goodness, and all solids, this would be gorgeous too. We're getting so many Quilting Cuddle solids, you guys. I cannot wait till they all come in. It's just awesome. This is that Wanderlust collection in blue. This is what I got them from. I didn't use this print, but it's like my absolute favorite. And I kind of didn't use it because I'm saving it for something else. And then I'm also saving this one. I can't even handle it. These are so pretty. But you've probably seen these already. We have videos out there with all of them. This one here, they're so pretty. But what I did want to show you is I just got some of the Cottage Rose, which I know Julie has shown you guys on their Tuesdays. But this gorgeous Cottage Rose is like, I just can't even handle how pretty it is. I'm a big pink and green fan. And so I'm going to make a little baby quilt, but I am going to use some of these really cute little animal foundation paper piecing in there. So I'm planning to do a few of these cute little animals. This is just a book. This is by Ingrid Alteneter. She has a website as well. I just got this at the library. I thought they were super cute. But I'm going to use a few little squares of these animals and then mix in some patchwork in there. And I'm really excited. I think it's going to be so cute. And the foundation paper piecing is just going to take it up a notch. So you can use any patterns with this Quilting Cuddle. I mean, the sky's the limit with foundation paper piecing right now. And when I do finish that, because I need to get it finished like by next week, I will post it in the I Love Cuddle Facebook group. So if you're not over there, you should get over there because we have a lot of fun over there. All the other ambassadors are over there. So we're always giving tips. Yeah, definitely. There's the little banner. Join our group. We're happy to have you over there. If you've done any foundation paper piecing with Cuddle, because I do know there's some of you out there that have done it with even Luxe Cuddle before, C3. So I know you guys have done it. And Quilting Cuddle just has made it so much easier. So I'm really excited about where we can go with quilting stuff with this now. We're sort of re-entering the quilting world. So that's really exciting. I think we probably are ready to do our drawing of winners. I think I saw any of the questions I think were answered. I know there's a few ambassadors out there that have been helping to answer some questions. So I don't think there's any additional questions. I do know you need to enter the National Sewing Month giveaway. Yep, there's the banner for that too. So that's over on the Shannon webpage on the blog. So you can find the link to the giveaway. It's on social media as well. But that Bernette is really fun. That Fun Lock, well, it's Fun Lock, so of course it's fun. But we love Bernina, and that's a really, really generous prize. But on top of that, there are, I mean, all of our favorite partners, they're all over there. It's a huge prize pack. So you definitely want to sign up for that. Now, next week, Sheila Ryan and I are back with a Cuddle conversation. And this time we're going to be doing a conversation on Milan. And I do have a piece over here. So if you have not worked with Luxe Cuddle Milan before, I mean, I can't even. There are some new colors coming. And if you didn't see the live with Julie, that wasn't technically live, she and Annette, there was an issue with internet last week, but it's out there that showed all of the fun prints and stuff. Oh my goodness, there's so much going on. But Milan is a really, really fun fabric, but people always have questions about it. So we're going to talk about how to sew it up, what we do with it. It is perfect time of year because we're all getting, hopefully, into that cozy season. So yeah, we're going to talk all things Milan. So start thinking of your questions for us. Be sure to tune in during our 1:30 time slot Eastern next Tuesday, and look out for the social media posts for that because you can ask your questions right on there. And then we do give away to some of the questions that we get answered on the actual Cuddle conversation. So Bethany, the Bethy Boop asked, do you ever do freezer paper piecing? And I have. I haven't done it with Cuddle, but I don't see why that wouldn't work. But yeah, I think it would work just fine. I don't even know if any of the other people out there have done it. Feel free to answer her because I have not done it. Oh, Jackie has the link for you guys right there with the for the Bernette machine. So that is over on YouTube. You can click the link right from there if you're over there watching, or you can get that from the Shannon Fabrics webpage as well. Adriana, do we have winners for today? Oh, there we do. See, she's so fast. Just as I'm saying it, she pops it up. Oh, okay. So Teresa says that you totally can. She bought it as 8.5 by 11 sheets that you can print on. Okay, so that's awesome. So that's a great way to be able to use it then. Okay, so the winners today are Melissa Feldhaus, Monty Laster Morgan, sorry, it's a little bit further away from me, and Toby McLaughlin. So just email info@Shannon Fabrics. We need your name, shipping info, and we do need your phone number because to ship it, we need a phone number for the shipping, and put in the subject line live winner, and then they'll let you know what fat quarter packs we have and which collections are available, and you can choose which ones. So hopefully you guys learned a little something about foundation paper piecing today. Again, if there's any questions, next week we're talking about Milan on Cuddle Conversations, but I'm sure Sheila and I can answer some foundation paper piecing questions there too. So if you try it between now and then, post in the I Love Cuddle Facebook group. And we'll see you guys next week.